Hello, children of all ages. I watch a lot of review, criticism, and critique videos, and there are a ton of misconceptions about animation and its production. This seems to cause a lot of issues in the animation and commentary communities when they react to each other. But before that, you may be questioning the reasoning behind this video. Well, hopefully by the end of this video, you will be a little bit more educated on animation, the industry, and the art of critique. Also, I thought it would be fun to make, so here we go. My name is Min. I recently graduated from SCAD, that is the Savannah College of Art and Design. I studied animation, specializing in 2D with additional experience in production, or the business behind the art, you might say. So with that, let's get started with the first part of this, the misconceptions about animation. This is probably the thing I see most. Tweening isn't real animation, low frame rate animation isn't real animation, if I can do it in Premiere, it isn't real animation. Blank isn't real animation. Here's the important thing for you to know. Yes, all of it is real animation. It doesn't matter what you think the effort that went into it is. It's all real. Let's take a look at the definition of animation. The technique of photographing successive drawings or positions of puppets or models to create the illusion of movement when the film is shown in a sequence, and/or the manipulation of electronic images by means of computer in order to create moving images. Right there in the definition. Drawings or puppet pieces or models to create the illusion of movement. What the YouTube community has deemed tweening is literally part of the definition. As well as a side note, professionally, tweening just means the images between two key poses. So tweening is literally what makes the difference between animation and a slideshow, regardless of if it's puppet pieces or hand-drawn frame by frame. Speaking of slideshows, let's talk about low frame rate animation. And to begin our dive into that, let's talk about the history of early animation. Animation is just the illusion of movement. There's tons of debate when the first examples of animation occurred. Some people even include cave drawings showing sequences of action and puppetry as far back as 30,000 BC. I hope I said that number right. It's on screen. This is more prehistory of animation. It's what led people to discover the function and limitations of the human eye and how to trick it, known as optical illusions. The after image effect is the main thing exploited to figure out how the illusion of movement works. Keep in mind, live action or animation, all film is a series of images, a slideshow if you will, and the frame rate is what causes us to perceive the movement. Some early pre-animation animated forms included, and I am gonna mess up these names, the Zoetrope. Two images are placed on opposing sides of a disc, and the disc has a string on either side of it. When the disc is spinning, it causes the eye to perceive the images as one thing. The Zoetrope. This consists of a series of drawings on a narrow strip of paper inside the revolving drum, with viewing slots on the sides. And the Praxinoscope. This uses mirrors instead of slots in the side to present the moving images as the drum is turning. As far as frame-by-frame animation goes, J. Stuart Blackston is the father of animation. The early concepts of frame-by-frame animation was the lightning cartoonist, and works such as the enchanted drawing, which you can see a bit of on screen here. Following this, the first recorded frame-by-frame animation was Blackston's Humorous Phases of Funny Faces, created in 1906, which you can see a bit of right now on screen. And let's make a note. Puppet animation also makes its first appearance in this short at the end. This is an old version of puppeted animation. While these are the first recorded instances of these kinds of animations, the first animated cartoon was actually considered to be Phantasmagoria. Phantasmagoria was animated by Emile Cole in 1908. It was animated on white paper where every image was traced from the previous one with small alterations to produce movement. You know, how frame-by-frame animation works. It is believed the use of negative printing of the images is a deliberate homage to humorous phases of funny faces. So if you made it this far in the video, you might be thinking,
"Hey Min, this history part of the video is really dragging. And how did slideshows even lead into this? Also, does the history have anything to do with critique?"
To which I say, whoa, you're still watching the video? That's pretty neat. Let's do a lightning round, shall we? A very slow lightning round. Winsor McCay started as a newspaper cartoonist who adapted his comic strip, Little Nemo, into a short, and following that was How a Mosquito Operates in 1912, and most famously, Gertie the Dinosaur in 1914. These were praised for their character animation and were considered to not be surpassed until the golden era of Disney. And in Gertie's case, McCay would perform on stage and make it seem like he was interacting with her in real time. While a pioneer of animation quality, his production was not sustainable. The animation process was not cost-effective enough to maintain regular appearances in the release schedules, in competition with live-action films. Even McCay, an animation snob and purist, incorporated brief animation cycles. J.R. Bray and Bray Studio. This guy revolutionized the animation industry, to a point the industry could exist in the first place. They made a shift from an individual artist to a team or assembly line process. They also developed cell animation, transparent cells containing the moving assets that could be overlaid on a static background. This opened tons of time shortcuts, which allowed the possibility of higher quality products. Now, if you're watching Colonel He's a Liar at the Bat on screen, you may argue production quality. Trust me, I agree with you. Just because the possibility of higher quality is created doesn't mean they weren't still struggling to hit certain runtimes and be a frequent part of the cinema bill. The Bray Studio released a new film every 1 to 2 weeks. It was cheaper to produce, it could compete with live action, it allowed for more detailed backgrounds, and it allowed for an exploration of narrative and animation. After the industry was established, it began to benefit off of a star presence. Reoccurring characters in animation, like reoccurring characters in live action, had many benefits. Continuity across the series, a hero for the viewers to root for and identify with, advertising and an image to establish personality, merchandising, and more reusable animation. Star characters like this would include familiar names like Mickey, eventually, and unfamiliar ones like Colonel He's a Liar. Like frame-by-frame animation and puppeting, stop-motion was also born in humorous phases of funny faces. At first, the method was used as a special effect in live-action films. But as 3D animation is to live-action films now, stop-motion in films like the teddy bears here that you can see on screen is still considered animation. In Electric Hotel, the method of pixelation is used. This is the process of using live-action figures, normally people, as stop-motion puppets. This process wasn't used often in animation history. It has a very off-putting, uncanny effect, so it didn't necessarily resonate with audiences. Later, similarly, stop-motion puppets were created from dead animals and insects. You can research that one on your own if you're interested. Silhouette and cutout animation is the earliest version of puppeted animation and tweening. The first feature-length animated film was The Adventures of Prince Achmed. Yeah, I know, you may have thought it was Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That's how our Disney-dominated society would like you to remember it. However, Prince Achmed came out in 1926, 11 years before Snow White. Another fun fact about Prince Achmed. It was animated and created by Lottie Reininger. I hope I said that name right. She was a pioneer of silhouette animation and film direction. An amazing woman, to be honest. Despite the first full-length film being a silhouette animation, we know now that cell animation became the dominant style of animation. Of course, back then, no one was sure which way the industry was going to go. Silhouette animation, while fading into obscurity, still had an insane impact on the animation industry. It stands as one of the 12 principles of animation. Disney insisted the emotion of characters needed to be clear, even if all other details of the characters were stripped away. Speaking of Disney, hours could be dedicated to his contribution and influence on the industry. So, in short, here is a brief history, a little snippet. Alice's Wonderland, live-action transposed on Cartoon Environment. One of the many studios to create Felix the Cat ripoffs, because everyone likes anthropomorphic animals, right? Risque rubber hose humor. Lost Oswald the Rabbit because bad best friends. Made Mickey for the lulz of risque films still gots to get done, fam. In the 30s, Disney realized, hey, this shit's gonna get demonetized if we're not family friendly. And my best friend was better at writing this risque shit. So, rip, am I right, LOL? Mickey ripoffs forever! Merchandise for days, decades, centuries. Trapped with a Mouse, Silly Symphonies, all the colors, the Technicolors. Multiplane camera. So much stuff, guys. Like, too much stuff for this video. Like, listen, too much. Warner Brothers was a thing. Following Lottie's silhouette animation, Michael Ocelot made silhouette animations in the second half of the 20th century. Etoiles inventeuses. The Three Inventors is an example of his work. You should be able to see it on screen. Well, this covers the basics of history of animation. However, for a history that's a little over a century, there's a ton to sift through. And I think it's all super interesting. And if you do too, you should do some research on it. However, we gotta move on to part 3 of this video. As the internet became a thing, and animation was moved onto computers, it became easier for independent animators. It's really not difficult to get your hands on a way to animate. It's constantly getting easier. And I would say because it's gotten easier to do, people have more opinions, uneducated opinions and biases on what counts as animation and what doesn't. So let's talk about the logistics of animation and how some history is repeating itself. I've seen people who aren't in the industry say some pretty uneducated things when trying to give helpful critique. So let's clear things up. Especially when it comes to YouTube Storytime animators, there is nothing wrong with having a rig or a puppet of some sort. In fact, from an industry standard, it would be stupid not to have a rig or assets that you can reuse in every video. If you're under the impression the animation industry takes its sweet time to make your favorite show so every detail is perfect, without ever having to worry about efficiency, that's a really sweet thought. But perfection doesn't make money, and animation is an industry, so it puts food on the table for people. And depending what project you're working on changes how production goes. For example, one of my favorite professors worked on Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. You may be surprised to know the show was created and animated in Flash, but trust me, after getting to look at those Flash files, taking as many shortcuts as possible shouldn't always be considered a bad thing, and taking some shortcuts allows for more production to be finished faster, which costs less money to make. Now, you may not want to take my word for it, so I talked to a professional.
Hi, my name is Kaylin Santos, or Flair Saram online, and I am an animator at Copernicus Studios in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Kaylin is a good friend of mine, and I really appreciate her taking the time to do an interview with me about her studio's workflow. Now, before you hear this interview, do know studios are all different, but when it comes to production, they all work pretty similarly. Also keep in mind, I cut out some of the friendly banter for time's sake, or for privacy reasons, but I kept as many topics in as possible so you can get the full experience of the interview, and as much about the industry as possible. So here's the interview with industry animator Kaylin Santos, recorded August 21st, 2018.
So, how are you?
I'm good. I work.
Rip. Do you ever have to bring a bunch of work home, or?
No, it's always in the studio because they work on a server. Like every time in school where it's like, always work offline, work online. Well, here it's like, always work online because you have to be connected to the server to do anything.
I always still worked on the SCAD servers.
Nice. But yeah, I got this, I had to work overtime, over the weekend, and then I got one scene, which is like 1,000, not even 1,000, it was, 900 frames, and I'm still working on it. I'm so close to being done, and I could have finished it if I stayed longer, but I decided I didn't want to be late, so I'll just finish it tomorrow. But the next scene that I have to do, like, they went from 0 to 100 real fast and gave me a whole 800 frame scene. Nothing is roughed out for me, so I have to do it all myself, to do all the keys. And there's like 3 characters, and they're interacting with pizza and this giant bong, and it's like, what is going on? Help!
So
Right?
that rolls right into like the basic exact question I want to ask you is like, how much rush do you have in the industry? Because the topic I'm covering specifically at this section of the video is I'm basically talking about how I've seen some opinions online that are like YouTube animators and content creators should like take as much time as they need to make things perfect, like industry professionals. And I'm like, you stupid. Like, industry professionals are also rushing. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
So
Sometimes we're a little lenient, but on the other side, it's like, we still have deadlines.
So what is like an average work week for you when it comes to workload and what's expected of you?
Every day we have to complete 150 frames, whether that be keying or animating. And then that totals to whatever 150 frames is after 5 days, like 750 frames for the week. And as of lately, we have a queue where everything is digital. We can see what shots are given to us, if we have notes on them, if we render it and submit it. It's like a big network of communication between the whole company, or at least the whole production. And we have a queue of, here's what you have to do. It's due by usually Friday. We have, on paper, we're supposed to be, 1 week is keying out all of the animation, all of the shots, and then the next week is animating all the shots. But one of our episodes was really heavy in animation, and that took like twice as much time to finish, and people like me are still working on that episode, so we're definitely behind, but it's supposed to be what's going on.
It's always better on paper than it is in practice.
Like, we're supposed to be finished with the keys on this next episode by Friday, and we're like, it's basically Wednesday, and I'm like, he wants all the notes for this episode we're working on right now to be done by tomorrow, so that's when I need to finish that other one I'm working on. But on paper, we're supposed to have all the keys done for 6 on Friday, but that's not going to happen, so good chance that my contract might be extended.
How much longer do you have on your contract?
My contract ends on the end of October, like October 26th.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I mean, I'd like to know sometime in September whether or not I'm staying or leaving. I have a feeling now that we're like halfway through the season, because there's only 10 episodes. We're halfway through it, and it's like the end of August, and we're only at episode 5, and we have 2 more months left. We're probably gonna get an extension, but I need to know soon.
So, when it comes to while you're working, how often do you take shortcuts? And when I say that, I mean like shortcuts that don't impact the quality of work. Like, for example, how Professor Araya would always, he would sometimes pull up, like, a Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends thing, and he's like, see, this is a waste shot, so you don't have to animate any walking, which is the best thing ever.
Yes, we do that a lot. I mean, I've copied and pasted cells or, like, keyframes if I know that it's being used, especially if one character is bending over and then getting back up. I know at least 2 of those frames I could reuse. But there is, and I think that you can do this with any Toon Boom thing, I just have no idea how to set it up. There's a thing that we have called a pose copier, where it's a script and you have to turn it on and set it up, but you can potentially save poses or anything into the library, and you can use the pose copier to put it into the scene. So you know how regularly, like if you put something into the library and you drag it into, it creates an entirely new rig?
Yeah.
Well, this, using the post copier, it will take whatever it has in the post copier and just put it directly into the rig you have now. You don't have to double it up. So we use it a lot for like head tilts. Like we have just one comp for the head, and it's looking up, it's looking down, all 360. If it's a main character, if it's not a main character, it just has like 3 poses and that's it. And it also has all of the lip sync. So if for some reason your rig goes away, or you delete it on accident, the pose copier, you can reach into the pose copier and grab it. What's also cool about the pose copier is you can, depending on the angle, you can have walk cycles in there. So you just so helpful. I mean, it's only for like 3 poses, and I've definitely done a couple walk cycles where it's like it's a secondary character. Obviously, you don't have the walk cycle, but oh my god, if you did, it'd be amazing. But yeah, you could just drag and drop each frame of it into the scene and not even have to do the walk. And there's some idle animation in there as well. Like this one character always drinks, so you have a whole section of him just taking a drink over and over and over again from different angles. So yeah, that's a huge cutting corners thing that they encourage us to do.
I mean, it's efficiency at the end of the day. I mean, at least the way professors phrased it and the way I've seen it is just like, at the end of the day, if you waste time redoing stuff you already have the assets for, you're wasting money. So...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's cool is they will allow us to, like, if this character doesn't have a sitting pose, you can drag in your drawing of the sitting pose into, like, a pending library, and people on the, I believe it's on the rigging side, will determine if that pose is approved, and then they could put it into the pose copy, so it's, like, constantly growing with references and stuff like that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's the thing about, like, puppeted animation. This is just, I don't know if this part will be in the video, but this is just, like, feeling about puppet animation. Like,
yeah.
the longer you work on it, the better the rigs are, and the more assets you have, the more efficiently you work. Like, and the higher quality things are. So, like, the first episode, if your rig is shit, you, like, keep working at it, and then it gets better because you're just making more assets forever.
Right? Nice.
Do you watch any YouTube Storytime animators? I don't know if I'm going to use this part of the video or not, but...
Example?
Like the Odd Ones Out, or Jaden Animation, or... Some of my favorites are like Cypher Din, because she was in a gaming studio.
I do not, but I probably should.
I think it's interesting because they make me think of, and the reason I'm doing this video is they make me think of, like, a repeating of the history of animation, which is why I have a long section of the video dedicated to just, like, the history of animation. Because, because you and I studied animation, it's like, their animation isn't great, but their storytelling is normally pretty good, and it's just interesting seeing, like, a giant community of people that can support themselves on animation that don't have formal education experience. So it's like, it makes me think of, like, the beginnings of the industry, like people just doing it because they could, and then supporting themselves.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
But because they don't have the formal education for it, some of them don't take critique very well. But then a lot of the people that give them critique don't know anything about animation.
Oh, it's double whammy, jeez.
Yeah, so it's like... like, I see a lot of people making examples to the industry that don't know anything about the industry. Like, some of the misconceptions are not cutting corners in the industry, which, you as you just said, is definitely encouraged to cut as many corners as possible.
Right? Like, I was just watching Voltron last night, just binging the last couple episodes, and there was a whole episode, and they used this in multiple episodes, where it's the same shot of one guy in the foreground, another guy in the background, and all, like, no one is moving except their mouths. That's it. And they do it over and over and over again. I'm like, oh my god.
It saves money, like...
It does. It just kind of sucks when you can pick it out. I'm sure it's happened in other shows that I've watched as a kid, and I just never realized it until rewatching it. But that was just one that stuck out to me the most. Like, oh, it's just the same. Okay, it's that shot. Okay, it's a close-up of that guy. He's just talking. No one's really moving their mouth.
If you want to see a show that's really bad about that, watch season 5 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because there are literally like 20 or 30-second segments, not even because of 4Kids, that are just like a single image that it pans across with no movement whatsoever.
Nothing.
But yeah, I think that was all my questions.
Cool. Yeah.
Now that you know a little more about the industry, let's cover stuff like animatics. Animatics are where sequential art and animation come together. Let's look at the definition. A preliminary version of a film, produced by shooting successive sections of storyboarding and adding a soundtrack. Honestly, with solid storyboarding, I've seen plenty of animatics look better than final animation. If you're a solid comic or storyboard artist, but suck at animation, and try to animate, while admirable, it may detract from the story you want to tell. I notice a lot of YouTube storytellers like to find a middle ground between full animation and animatic. This is smart, it helps get nice looking videos out fast. And if you get out content fast, that means there's a lot more content for your viewers, and more viewers for your content. Another important note, and stay with me on this, not all animators are created equally. I know that sounds super bad, but hear me out, because it does make a difference on how you critique someone, and things to keep in mind when you're reviewing someone. Everyone strives to make their content better, but hopefully not murder themselves while doing it. Some animators are self-taught artists that stumbled onto success and have no formal training. Some are kick-ass industry beauties with formal educations, industry work experience, or both. And some are just kids that feel inspired to do something with their time. And then you have everything in between. A lot of them struggle at whatever skill level they're at to improve while also keeping people viewing their content. This mirrors the real industry. Speed is important if it's balanced with quality. If you make amazing work but it takes you 2 weeks to animate 30 seconds, you're kinda screwed, my dude. And that doesn't even factor in how good of a team player you are. If you make good work, but work slow, are nitpicky to hell and back, and just overall snobbish about yours and everyone's work, it's not very likely companies will see you as a good fit. Especially since there are plenty hard-working, halfway decent or better animators who are team players and live for the work. In both the industry and YouTube, speed and personality are priorities, where anyone can improve their quality over time if they just work for it. For YouTube animators especially, since the personality behind the channel is also the director, the producer, the writer, the storyboarder, the animator, sometimes the only one, the cleanup artist if they need a cleanup stage, and the compositor who edits the video together at the end. And to stay efficient, singular people or small teams have to pull a Colonel He's a Liar. I told you that history would be important to stay relevant. And an important thing about quality is it's important to take art direction into account when measuring that. It's important to weigh what the artist wants versus if they're being lazy about it. For example, if you don't color a shot, did you not color it because you're lazy, or did you not color it because you don't like the look of it when it's colored? Animators are always striving to be the best version of themselves and to tell the best stories. It's very possible that this period of animation history will be an important milestone for whatever comes next in the future. And independent animators on YouTube have my full confidence and support.
Aw man, that's so sweet and idealistic, but this video is called The Art of Critique, and you've only talked about the history of animation and how great you think YouTube animators are. Like, if you have this much praise for them, wouldn't it infuriate you if people came in and just shit all over them?
And the answer to that is honestly, not really. Sure, there are criticism styles that frustrate me, but criticism isn't a bad thing at its core. Let's talk about how to have a healthy relationship with critique as an artist. And yes, I'm gonna be using myself as an example. If you grow up as an art kid with no formal art classes, you're not going to get to experience much critique from a formal place. People are just impressed you can hold a pen most of the time. And I was lucky to have a small, supportive group of watchers on DeviantArt when I was young. So when I started college, I knew I wanted to improve, and I was very aware my work wasn't going to be up to par. So my first year, I struggled to try not to take it personally when someone shit on my work. And eventually, I stopped taking it personally and developed a different issue. This is something I still struggle with. It's the need to please people. I was obsessive over trying to get as many people's eyes on my work to find out how to make it perfect. And you may think, wow, your work must have improved so much. And while it kinda did, I think it would have gotten better if I had tried to stay focused on making better art instead of trying to please people's individual preferences. Because the problem with trying to please everyone is people's preferences get in the way of quality. Some people may not like how you draw a tree, while someone else may not like that you put the tree on the ground and would rather the ground be floating in the sky. People's personal preferences are gonna get in the way of your vision most of the time. So if you take everyone's advice on a project, you end up losing the elements of your vision. There has to be a balance. Criticism is a valuable tool that helps people grow, so to ignore it completely is a bit of a waste. However, the fun part as an artist is you get to pick and choose what you use. If you listen to it, think it over, you can keep the points you agree with and then throw away the garbage. Then, reviews and criticism is really a free service people are trying to provide, even if they suck at providing it. Constructive criticism tells you what you're doing right and wrong and gives you an option of how to fix it. Destructive criticism is done with the sole intention of dragging someone down with no options of how to improve. It's criticism that silences arguments between artist and critique. Some forms of this criticism I see are as simple as, "That's not real animation. You should quit. So-and-so is better than you." Or people just insulting others and then trying to pass that off as genuine constructive criticism. Now let me be clear. Let me be very clear. You can be an asshole and still offer good points. While it's not preferred, the personality of a reviewer doesn't completely discredit them and what they have to say. Especially on YouTube, a lot of them have to be entertaining or play a character. They're also hardworking content creators that, if this is their profession, they have to keep an audience engaged for their livelihood. People don't have to be an animator to be able to critique animation. Anyone with an informed opinion can do it and be really good at it. And while my first instinct is to say, if you don't like it, don't watch it, LOL, that silences criticism in a similar way that bad criticism silences creators. Let's do an example, using me, because I'm a narcissist, or I don't want to make any comparisons to real life examples. I'll let you pick. Let's pretend I have a big fan base, right? And I make popular videos. And let's say 2 rants come out about me. The first one talks about the undeniable fact that my voice is annoying and that my character design is weird and creepy because of the eyes, and the character is a guy, but the voice is kind of feminine. They're the worst person to ever try and create content. To that person, I would say, my dude, why are you still watching? Who is forcing you to watch me? It's obvious you don't like me, and you are wasting your time here. I can't change my voice. I like my look. It's okay. I'm sure there's content out there for you, but if you get this much unhappiness watching me, maybe you shouldn't. It's not worth it. The second rant, I don't know, The second one talks about the sound quality in my videos, or an issue with my editing, or if I say something problematic that needs clarification or response. Something that addresses a problem with my skill or person that actually has merit. In that case, I may not respond verbally, but I would take the critique to heart and maybe make a change if it's worth it. If I spoke to that person, depending on who it was, there might be a good fun conversation to have talking to them. Who knows? But telling that person to just not watch me if they don't like me isn't quite appropriate. It may be likely if they took the time to make an informed criticism that they like my content but have a few issues with it. I am more of a background lurker, so this example is highly unlikely to happen to me in this reality. But I hope the sentiment is clear to you, that someone trying to give a clear-cut critique is not trying to harm someone. It's okay for them to do that. It's important for progress for them to do that. I think the main point of this is everything needs a grain of salt. Criticism is important to progress if it's informed. We're at an interesting time where really anyone can pick up animation software and teach themselves how to do it if they really want to. And a lot is expected with these independent creators with any form of popularity that should be taken into account if your main critique is that they're lazy or not having their work look a certain way. Criticism needs to come from an informed place to have a positive impact, and people need to be able to handle it. It's a conversation that leads to progress. And as far as what comes next, well, we'll have to wait and see, won't we? My name is Min Maglon. I hope you found this informative. If you did, and you want to see more stuff like this, let me know with a like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful day.